láthair Hana Lazare nó Madame Lazare an teidil. Agus bí Madame Lazare a thóg garínín Levana agus tréad Levana gcónaí gur hethe a mamo nó méime mar ag léitear a bhíonn san leabhar. Gur heisí nuair a donsaigh na natsathe tír agus gur chuirsí fuhíd don chuid smúd as élan son í bars. Ach mar a airíonn Hana in ís tí gur ní scuiltear le leitana da garínín agus nochtar ghfuil curs a scéal. Agus noch teacher an scéal seo don léithir go máil cinál písa ar físa, is tó bhfuil cinál blachtracht nó mistéir I crían leabhar nach bhfuil. So at its heart, this book I felt was a mystery. It's an investigation into the core of the relationship between two women, the younger being Levana, and the slow realization that she undergoes into the character of her grandmother Hana, who's the Madame Lazare of the title, and how the story that this woman has always presented of her life begins to slowly unravel as she ages, revealing depths and twists that Levana could never have anticipated. Agus tá aiseolalas Tadhg Mac Dhonnagáin seo óna lucht le huirta agus ó léirbheastóirí chomh maith cógortas ó chríola a chaig. I know I'm not alone in having spent many months observing this book's success and just feeling thrilled and delighted for you. It's a remarkable book. It's leabhar leithe ann, manhuiid sé léite gin an seo bhórtaíh cóp a cheannach. You should all buy a copy or several. Christmas is coming. Agus is mór an our domsa, agus the gachtainna an sá, tá cínta locht éachna bheithin tá chun cé leora a dhéanamh ar an leabhar iontach so bhfuil an tosú le búla bos mór I gcuir Sulla líon tú sleochtón leabhar dúin, beidir gan in seoha dúin beagání méall ar híl an leabhar seo. Cé as a tháinig sé dú spóir?
Well, tá sé eisteach bheith seo seachtain in níomhás maithir mar is ó maithir a tháinig síl an scéal, is ó maithir a tháinig an bun smaoinemh an bun síl as ásan for diailh an scéal. Agus an scéal duine se chum Harla sé gunda bhuió baróisteach amór, tá ceann go agad haon le haamór. Harla sé is na níideach fichadaí nó beidir sna níideach trichadaí. Where the kind of the seed, the idea of the book was given to me by my late father who passed away last week. And so it's kind of, it's nice, I mean I have mentioned that in the interview, so it's nice to say it again here tonight. Makes it special in a way that it was something that happened to a neighbour around the 1920s and 1930s in Ahmore, which is in East Mayo, and there was a local man who at the end of his life succumbed to some sort of dementia or some sort of that kind of Alzheimer's or whatever it was, and Doireann Ní Ghríofa an cumarsáidí ina, Cháilse an cumas labhairt. But though he lost the ability to speak English, he was still speaking, but all that he had left was Irish. And this was a surprise to his family because he had never spoken Irish to them. He had never spoken Irish to his wife or his children or his grandchildren. So it was an interesting and mysterious kind of occurrence. And he was probably raised in a house that was kind of intensely Irish speaking in his childhood. And then at the end of his years, when I suppose when his brain was kind of succumbing to dementia, though these deep memories were all that were left. And in that story, in fantastic kind of compression, you have the story of something enormous that happened in Ireland in the second half of the 19th century, when you had this enormous language shift from, especially on the western seaboard, the western side of the country. Because at the beginning of the 19th century, there were 4 million Irish speakers in Ireland. And then the Great Famine of the 1840s, 1 million people died, a lot of them Irish speakers. 1 million people emigrated quite soon after, a lot of them Irish speakers. And a process of emigration began that continues really until this day. And an awful lot of the people that left were from the west, from the impoverished counties of my own county, of County Mayo was one of the worst hit by famine. So that was kind of so that was the economic and social and kind of fallout of the famine. But the cultural fallout was what happened to the language. The people chal na Gael a mishnach, chal siad an credif in a Tadhg Mac agus hoog siad an cinne an teanga chréigen agus hoog siad an cinne gur bhar gur a plé le béarla agus a glána hóg an le béarla leis ag seansa saoir a chóirtóid. Agus is cinál írsma don rud a hála an fear sin ar leabhar ma aithir faoi. So bhí an scéal sin an, bhí an smaoinemh an, agus bhí mar am héin céird is féidir a dhéanamh ó híomh piece of fiction a dhéanamh ó. Agus sin an rud is as sin a tháinig an ceis sin. Agus de réidir chéile scríb me rairc, scríb me cúpla rairc, rinne me bhachnamh congo a me níos leis, cin charachtar hastín a níos le, chur leis, cechaí is féidir an rud ás cinál I dteonaí éagsúla agus de réidir chéile tháinig an tuaisce. Amach.
Is tá an táling go léir gur sin mar hála, an they have a gáin doing le a hall.
Okay, so aber tusa mit leis an síl sin, you know, this man who lost his ability to speak, and all he had left were this, whatever he was saying in Irish that you know nobody understood in the area, and that was always kind of really interesting for me, because I would think, well, if I was there, I'd know what he was saying. I'd love to know what he was saying. So it also gave me the permission to you know, this character I was going to create was to put whatever I wanted, you know, in that memory. So, would you be name a chlustal? Okay, that's my one measure. So what he knows, so schreef Lehman and Chéad Fíosa and Chéad Fíosa. So this is the prologue of the book, and we're in the middle of Galway Bay in 1944, and so this is the character who is going to lose her memory and is going to, in her old age, is going to come out with some very surprising kind of clues as to what her real identity is. She's going to live all her life as a Jewish woman in Paris. She's going to tell everyone that she was born in Estonia and that she fled from Estonia during the war, and that she was the only member of her family of origin who survived the Shoah. And she is going to marry. She's going to marry a young Jewish soldier that she meets in London, and they are going to settle down and live the rest of their lives as a Jewish couple in Paris. But Bullen with lehead and chéadúr gún na Gaillimh ní cearcha ceithid. Agus ní Hana Lazare no Madame Lazare an tanna darí fós ach murid agus is Ilan chís is as áirinte agus tá sí ag rábhíocht trasna an chuin. Okay, so is cuma cén réith nó siúla dhéantas murid ní ácha sí an ichanacht in dia go brach. Teithe sí agus teithe sí ach éilú ar bin í bheith eice. Gach glóiseach de hógan na colin in is agus í a taringtar na maidí fad a ráha seo fanna siad in na cuimhne. Gach uair a línan sí a scábal go le hairgurt in Atlanti, gach brean sáile a eitlíon rídan airfuair le turlingtar a lecan, gach giascán a hagan ó chunablach an mháid chanmháis fuiche. Lasta a galachár de bheits an rairc seo, a thuchas a eisice I ríist agus a ríistelle a fe a síl ada le hí a bhainte sa colla éiche. I héin agus a leabháidir a trá a ríide sáile, isce chuan na Gaillimh a fucha in a gluine. Idir a míle díhe le géir a tala terim a bhainteach sa le móchan na réaltaí os a géim, sa le neairóin gríon go híisiil sa spéad head hua. Gá chalan na glóiseacht mar a bheith colan na bháin an, a crumach an tosaí go rihimúil agus a taring siar go tean ar na maidí. Ilan áran ar a gúil, ar an aiamach ilan fada lechan na héirin. Áte bhfuil cuairt tucaí ag muiread a rí faoi Ó Hana. Cé go dtuigeann si go ríomhaithe na phráin a bhainans le héalú, ag an amcéanna tá sí strachairt leis bhain mide atá hí an chorach a chasa timpeall. Fille a ríistir an teachín ceantaí a bhfuil mór an chulaíthe a sír caiticí an. Ráise go nóméid sul an nearna sí an rud a rinne, an nóméid sul ar hit páric an a chrap ar leacrachaí an orlar. Amachchan seo ní mar bhring leidíthe bhána ilas an rairc seo in níar a dúathe. Sa blianta fada tá roimpe í a taistil ar réon flódaithe metro go dain faoi chathair foras, nó na si go ciún is synagogue sa gahar chéana, aró sí fucht nimhnach na hí seo a bailúna timppel a ríist, sulla léisca splank chuimhne ina hintin a thiúla sirí. Sirí gnómid áirithe seo, nuair a stoppin siad an chorcha umrú agus leagan lábhar ghuala na leabhádóra. Nuair a chasan sesin timppel in na tro brethar chuintíomh gon chorach le hí a chuineáil díreach san isce. Casan muile í héin gomáil le céim a thuirt ar a gorp atá sínte a dón na chorí. Ompíonn si an níir is le síl ar an mháid agus crumann siad bert síos le brethar ghólaí agus a chusa fáric. Cinnta na hintin go John an Jór a bheits an nóméid Jerry seo, corp fáric á leanú isteach sa sáile, an chorach a luasca ar dala fuga. A lábheas a bóla isgur dús, an sin a chluigean, an mohol cata grúige ar fullún sa sáile mar a bheith sléad feminine an. An leath lábheile a goil faoi, an dá dhéag a sin amach i tro an grinneol, an chawl an na colp agus a deire na cusa a slugisteach sa dain dorcha fó hín. Seachas gnéir bid an raach seo ilis a ríist agus a ríistelle, a níhás móchar slínra ar bhuiad ná an smara fola ar a bus. Nuair a thumann si a láb sa sáile leis an bhuileach lána, leathan néal dorcha amach in ngach tro, é scapa leis go rábach nó go mbíonn cuan na gaiileh ar fad in a loch dearag fola. An sin sín si héin agus an bochail siar in níor sa gorach, díríonn an rain, bedan an ahhuir na maidí ráha, crochan gan isciad agus croman ar an iomrú. Hís fuha in isce orsa an Atlanti, mar imíon na Brudain is na Mucamara, na Péiste is na Portain, tit na corp gomáil I dro an grinneol, súla ar letha, gégus spréite, crí gan rihim. Páric I mí an 8 lí na fírinne, I ghrifuair, fácaí le fánaí léthe ar clí na mréal.
Mór lumsa ach chonig mé gur bé no an bhfuil an ceartta gom gur bé Madame Lazare an céad ar ghail go riomh an míoch den dúise.
Is se.
Tá sé sin go híos na fád nach chuid agus dáirigh th cín leis tá go ahantas ar le ónna gach leabhar a fór an tahantas sin so có gáid agus le. I wonder would you this was the first Irish language book. See, I'm forgetting already to translate myself. This is the first Irish language book that was nominated for this prize, and it was particularly successful with it. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with the whole story of the European Prize for Literature, and do you see yourself as a European writer? Is there in any way that this experience has changed your sense of yourself? Agus the sáda sin mar scríbhneoir Abermís.
Okay, well, European Union Prize for Literature.
Apologies, yeah.
Just
sorry.
shame we were in a little
Yeah.
Bhí sé an géad cheanna animíad agus bhí sé go hála go bhhailse and especially my question. Do I see myself as a European writer? Yes, I do. Yes, I do, and I'm quite sure about that. I think the fact that both of us, as kind of active bilinguals who have two languages going on in our lives every day, it's a different experience of the world, and maybe a slightly different experience of Ireland to be an active bilingual, speaking Irish and English. And I have always felt that my creative output in Irish has always been as much an expression of my European identity as my Irish identity. Because in a certain way, Ireland is so connected and so knitted into the Anglophone world, the English-speaking world, which is fantastic in loads of ways. I mean, such an amazing culture that spans the globe and gives us all sorts of stuff from, the Sopranos to Beyonce to Joyce to Martin Scorsese. I mean, it's just so much stuff, which is fantastic. But having said that, the English language is not default human speech, and I think it's really important to remember that. And I think it's also, it helps us, as Irish speakers. it's much for me, the connection to the multilingual patchwork of identities and cultures out there on the European continent is so much more obvious, I think. That's my feeling. Now maybe that's not true, but that's personally how I feel about it.
That's fascinating. I find it so interesting, and I think it's probably, going by the noises from the audience, it's interesting to all of us to imagine. Maybe it says something about the Irish character. It's always so interesting to imagine how we're seen through the kaleidoscope of different identities, different visions. Do you feel, having gone through this experience with the European Prize for Literature, that there's a different perspective on Irish language literature coming from places that aren't Ireland itself? Do you feel that others look at our literature in our language in a way that perhaps is different from how we ourselves consider it?
Well, le bheith fírin nach leat, ich happen go leor daoine in Europe nach bhfuil sacco go bhfuil lehéid an, agus nach bhfuil óla sacco. A lot of people don't, aren't that conscious of the existence of our language.
Imagine that.
Yeah. But, I think in a certain way, because tá stádas na Gaeilge an spéisiúil ar bhealach, mar tá leor teangacha mindacha ar fud na Eorpa. Tá na Británia agus na Baskis a Brank, tá na Catalóní sa Spáin, tá éad pobl éagsúla ar fud na Eorpa. Agus mar bhfuil dul móram is sin Gaeilge an téim ceann ar fad díal atá mar hanga effigiúil a géantas na Eorpa. So sin cead gona fáhanna gur rá cad an leabhar a chuir isteach an géadúil síos. Catha an teang cad bheith an leabhar a bheith scríofa i dteanga effigiúil de chuid géantas na Eorpa. So ar bhealach is iontach an doras isteach é sin na scríbhneoirí na Gaeilge, agus tásúil an go leor scríbhneoirí eile mo dhia. Sin é mo ghí, mar ar bhealach, the funny thing about it and the lovely thing for a man of my youth is that
Don't laugh at that.
It's a prize for emerging writers of fiction. I mean, some of us take longer to emerge than others. If you keep at it, you get there.
There you go. Actually, that leads me to another question. The question of being an emerging writer. I guess, you're an emerging novelist, but so many other aspects of your creative life. Your talents have been expressed across numerous disciplines through song and novels and scripts for the screen, and that's just to name a small few. So I'll ask you a question I'm often asked. Do you know when the seed of an idea comes to you, which genre it will be expressed within? Or, to put it another way, when you're handed that ball of wool, do you know whether you're going to make a ganzi, a jumper of it, or a hata no céirte bheith ann? I mean, is it got céirte ann or a hagan an smín of cuat?
Ní bhíonas, agus is dóigh man sin a tréimh sí éagsúla mo héal freisin bhairin mar nuair a bhí me mairóg, bhí me an dírithe ar an órán mar in, agus cha me ar a laid dearníana a díú ar an órán, agus bhí me ggéire a bheith cumá. Bhí agus tágóin an grád an den órán mar genre agus mar bhealach le túhéanach ar aniu. Songwriting has the strength of it has something that a lot of other forms of art have lost, and what it can do fantastically well is incantation. Like the chorus of a song. That it's very like prayer actually. It's very closely related to prayer, I think. Is that you repeat and you repeat, the chorus of a song, and it kind of you sort of rise above the actual meaning of the words, and it brings you something else, and that's kind of an incantation. Contemporary poetry doesn't do that in that same way. It's much more kind of distilled, and it's about the beauty and the sound of the words, and I love poetry, and this year I think it was a kind of an avoidance behaviour for not starting a second novel. I started writing these kind of loose poems, which I wouldn't really, publish, but they were very therapeutic. But
it's a gateway drug. Don't be influenced by this.
Ó híh uaircéil an chuigur thosaméí ar a gceann seo, No, bhí mé treéis cúpla bliain maith a chaithfh i scríomh leabhar faoi raftarí. Agus tá sé simú mar ar bhealach siad an bhealach go bhfuil cinál beidir cosalacht áirithe idir an bhirt agan nó thaobh leabhar tá scríomh agan an spéise agan mar tá tír agus talamh faoin leabhar álainn na scríomh tú Ghost in the Throat faoi Doireann Ní Ghríofa agus an spéise agat. And Lena in the hour when the first time I met her, she was 300 years dead, and I was just a child.
Yeah.
Beautiful line, beautiful line. So my kind of my fanboy dead poet situation was with Raftery, who was from my part of County Mayo. He was from Cretma, he laid on near Cretma. And Raftery, I live in Connemara, and traditional singing is a huge part of the cultural social life. Mar tásig daoine ortha don seo sa lucht bheithla. Agus tá Raftery beo bechaíoch fós a Connemara. So bhí sim agam a scéal a scéal ar bhealach a bhí cinál difriúil nach rá acadúil ach a bhí ar a blas na scéalaíochta. So ha mé blianta pléile sin. So nuair bhí sé sin háart agus é fáil si agus é moth agus mar sin de bhí fór an rud mór eile dhéana. So nuair a tháinig an síl sin ó ma iad, sto gur ábhar óra an nó ábhar rudagins, a thopra me go man in tríal as uaircéile ásamachchas an síl sin. So níl sagam an freagra róig.
Oh, Dair go geala, Dair go geala. An cé ceistela tá sé cinál buinteach le sin scéalí iad agus we're often reminded that writing can be a way to resist forgetting and gohority goes and Laura Shaw's Doireann. Could you tell us a little bit about forgetting and remembering in the context of your own writing?
Well, again, I suppose what I said earlier about the huge kind of collective forgetting of our culture and the language. There was an old woman who lived beside me who I was very fond of. I used to go visit her even from when I was a small child, and she was, in my teens I became ferociously interested in the Irish language. And she used to talk to me a lot about the Irish language, as if it was something that she never had anybody else to talk about before that. But she told me this thing, which was really the saddest thing. She told me that the old people had this really odd sentence that they used to say to each other. Now, this was in the kind of the now extinct East Mayo dialect of Irish. Diku u ow. That was how she pronounced it exactly. I remember it so clearly. And that means, it has no meaning really, but it means a hound ate a raw egg. But the point of the Diku u ow was that she was saying that the old people used to say, I mean, listen to it. You know, it's like something a sound an animal would make. Yeah. It's not a language. So they had to violently in their minds kind of suppress all that stuff. It's not just a question of one generation calling an animal bow and the next generation calling it a cow. You know, when that kind of abandonment is done, there's so much that's lost. You know, people abandon their lullabies and they abandon their children's rhymes and they abandon their stories, and especially in a culture, a pre-literate culture, where oral literature was such a central part. It was like the library was burned, you know. Yeah. So that kind of forgetting and remembering, I suppose, is really, it's really built into this book because it's this fictional character who repressed her memory because of this terrible thing that she had done.
Yeah. I was so aware as I was reading it of the level and the depth of research that must have gone into it, and just my sense of admiration for that level of work, as well as the sheer labour of creating a novel, which is a work of the intellect in itself, I think. Ach sin le ceisna dainamadu leis an religiún agus leis an bénúlacht, Tadhg go léir fúte na chéile ann agus an féinúlacht cultúrtha is dócha. Conas mar was an gnéisisin den leabhar an sé leat an dús nuair ás sé níos déanaí agus an spéise go de gcónaí sa hiúdachas nua ar bé an leabhar seo a sprág an spéisin.
Well, it's still a space agam agoni a gursi creative beginneralta. Mar still here one cultura, agus still here one kinal, or one spirit of version. agus an na cinál na snáithe éagsúla atá ar fáil sa gréide. Mar hampla bhí blianta fadóhain chuir me gaeilge ar leabhar do fáistí chun gréide. Agus bhí cinál ranógur lethe bhain go leor créide éagsúla. Agus an ceanna bhain leis an hindúchas, bhí an éile sin a bhíon acu an the Festival of Light, Diwali, in sin an, agus lasan siad cuineal, lasan siad sáilte le fáilte a chur rih an rí dia cinnte bhain an le gréide. Agus ri se le me gan am. That's exactly the same thing that my parents used to do, my grandparents used to do, when they used to light a candle on Christmas Eve to guide Mary and Joseph on their way to Bethlehem. It's the same concept. It's the same trope, as it were. So I love those kind of little kind of comparisons you could make between religions. So another Harla leis gréide, Hana Lazare, I suppose I didn't sit down to write a book that would have a lot of sort of ideas about religion in it. It was something that really came from inside. A lot of it, I suppose, had to do with, kind of honouring my mother in a way, and her religion and her, especially her connection with the Blessed Virgin, which was, it's like the Blessed Virgin for her was a goddess, but also a mother, somebody that she could, really connect with, and she could see her, her troubles as the mother of 7 children, married to a farmer, not a huge amount of money around, and that she could just, the Blessed Virgin was always there to kind of help her through that, because she was a mother who had seen her son die on the cross, and my mother could see her as a fellow mother, as it were. And so beyond same agam and sin, agus an chui gora a cuitain deinta ag mawahar the creative. So an character shots scale murid, dinan shisha a cuitain than creative. Agus leanan she na pile war a wahochanacha in a seal, le scaelta a waban leis creative, scaelta a will bonus aku abers and weebla, agus gilior scaelta ella atá boniga san mailages. Agus san scéalta béileide a bhí go hair. Nach bhfuil éon bonús le in áide sa gríostíoch effigiúil mar de. So an sin I meas na scéalta sin bhí scéal eile agus beidir go léhan pí nas mar an tamagad. So this is kind of sort of how I had this idea, which I suppose based on my mother, was this kind of folkloric Catholicism, which was still, a lot of it was around when I was young, so then when I was kind of researching some of that stuff, I came across this seam of that story, those kind of religious stories, which were kind of anti-Semitic, which I really didn't know about, and a lot of them were about stories about how the Saviour, as the story on Slánihur, mar Dominic Snishkelta, he was minding his own business. He was walking on the beach, or he was doing whatever he was doing, and then this gang of Jewish men arrived, and they wanted to kill him. So then he would try to escape, and then so this. I'll read a little snippet of one of them. This is actually a very light rewriting of a traditional story. Stadir mór honachar. Honachar in Chréide in méileages agus fáilsí an leabhar faoin tedal an Slánihur a siúla talla. So seo scéal on trashin. So she's about 8 years old. She has been given the task to write down some folklore from her father, and the thing that she most loves about her father's stories are these religious stories. So this is the story about how one day, when the Saviour was walking on the beach, this gang of Jews were trying to kill him, and that he was saved by a limpet, which is a type of seashell. There's a shellfish that has the ability to stick itself to a rock. But before this happened, the limpet did not have this ability. This is what caused the limpet to gain this special superpower. So she decides. So I begin the story by saying that she always imagined that this happened on the beach of Kilwillerby, which is near where she lives on the Iron Island, áireann an tilan smó. How is she going to go to Ráisiil Widaví a Harlasha? An slánig hor a siúla an gáine, tort aradach a gratha héin, nó a hunnig sean scat a giúdach a níraige a móhíon, iad réil an a warú. Breanú hart go bheice se can mohaid se bháil. Crumma síos fechans an veci tífhir den na carigachaí a híh as na tráe. Deall mór an cariga bihabíán a bhí soch mór le na choras rair go dé. Na náfide teanna le se fearnáma éidir mhór a chrosta ortha. Agus cégur mac dé a bhí an hain bhí a ggóhan fatíis le slánigo. Bin an óir a thuile sé glódín deg. Góisteach an seofaí mar leagán ar san neacha láir. Bhíanna an slánigo ar na hímpel. Céh bhí cantleis ach barneach a bhíanana hí ar charig tíomh leis. Ní aici duna beistin seathúir san barneach. Tean bhaite steachan seo go beú. An phlean ar san slánigo. Rinne sé míúilt agus an chéad eile, bhí sé a héin thug de blin míltóg i decha a siúla a máir. Isteach leis faoi leagán an bharní. Behear go an na giúdaí timpeall ar a garig iad a smúraín hartar a míle díhil. Ach má bhí héin, dé ná deach ní rá ar wat dé. Níos an áte tá sé chuí be ar san fear a bhí ganas ar a héis písa. Fágaí seo eile. Agus nuair a bhí sé bailí leo, siúd amach leis an sláníthir slán sáhailte. Rinne sé míúilt eile agus scríal an dríocht a bhí cothaigh in hain. Le humpa buise bhí sé na bra ard scufanta an ahuair. Sin anúir a rinne sé an 3 míúilt. Mar a chusa agus na chliagána de sé leis sem marneach, bheithin se gufa ag na scoutéirí sin. Le buchas a ghlacha leat bhí heachta gáir in jobharan, an lá se amach go deire an down hir bei tusa a bharní in an túhéine gramod an charig. Tagach steirm agus tagach gaí ach ní choróid rud a bethú an leach a ráníon tú le túhéine an Londonán. Agus an lá sin amach tá an barneach in an éhéin a gramod gon charig.
Gomsa ach mas mí libse beg smuoine berkeisna with an a weaktiv. I'm going to ask another few questions, but if anyone here can think of a question to ask afterwards, we'd be delighted to answer them. Bisha sin ítach. Tá sé ítach éisteach leat I léibhún leir, just tá tríocht nach bhfuil buintach sin. Níl samhailíní an teochó fistrach is atá mé hín ach bín spéise gomsa a gcónaí nósna scríb nóirta nó nósna croitheachta is dócha le buinte le daoine eile ag chlostal. Would you mind revealing to us a little about your creative life? How do you write? Where do you write? Tell us all your secrets.
Okay. Well, when I'm working on something and it's going well, I like to get up early in the morning.
Okay.
How
early?
Well, when I say it, people will think he thinks that's early. 7-ish. 7-ish. That's really early in Ireland. I know this is Africa. That's the middle of the night in Ireland. So, 7-ish and 4-7 even, and I would write, and I often just kind of sit on the couch with the laptop, and I just write. I write a certain amount by hand.
Is this even before you have your breakfast? You go straight.
Oh, before
to
I have my
laptop?
breakfast, I have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I have a cup of tea,
Okay.
and I sit. I sort out the dog, a cup of tea, and I sit down straight into it, and. The longer I am left without anybody interrupting me, the better. I'm not saying that to my family. That's just how it works. And
do you feel that there's a sense of the subconscious coming straight through that early in the morning? That kind of you haven't fully awoken, that there's some part of your mind is preventing.
People say that, and maybe it's true. Maybe it's kind of less cluttered. Maybe.
Have you found that?
Maybe. I suppose I do not write at night.
Okay.
I've never been able to do that.
Yeah.
Night is for watching television.
Yeah.
or playing the guitar. So I do not write at night. No, I write in the morning generally. And what I do generally when I was working Madame Lazare, working on the previous book, is that I would look at something I did the day before and kind of fiddle with it a bit and clean it up a little bit. And that seems to kind of warm me up. And then I'll launch into the next bit, so something new.
Yeah. And do you find that you can write in your own space at home? Are you one of those writers who needs to go to a shed or go on like a writing retreat, or does it happen for you like that at home on the sofa always?
It does, but I have, like, for years I have been going to the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in Annaghmakerrig for years and years. This year is actually the first year in a long time I haven't gone. It's made a huge difference in terms of kind of holding on to almost my creative identity, because I have this little cottage industry that I set up years ago, which has turned into a bit of a monster, which is good, which is like a publishing house, and it's all consuming, really. It's a bit like teaching in a way. You can give as much time to it as you want, and there'll still be plenty more to do. But what Annaghmakerrig has helped me do is to just kind of get into that other zone and really get momentum. And then when I come back, I'm definitely up before 7, and I just keep that going for a good, if I'm away for a week, I'll just have great momentum for a good while after I come back. So that has been important. But I would get quite a lot done. I mean, when I was revising Madame Lazare, I got a lot of work done on the train. I used to be, occasionally doing things in Dublin, and I got a good pair of noise cancelling headphones. I would sit down, and there was a certain album I was listening to by Les Violoncelles Français, and they had an album of kind of Jewish music called Prière, which is a beautiful album, and I listened to that like on a loop. And that was it was nearly like when I put that on, okay, I'm in Madame Lazare zone,
Yeah, that's fascinating, really fascinating. I'm so struck as well by the intensity of that, like an Irene to Kate rather imagine that we go over to Leshna character, that there's the sense of immersing yourself in the character's world and almost being in the character's presence from first thing in the morning. On Irene to Ujna character in Lara Creekna, do you miss these characters that you've created after such a great intensity of focusing on it for so long, like Raftery, and Van and she'd laughed character, he thought Madame Lazare when she'd post that, and when she'd cur her lactive and she got.
Well, Van and she'd lum, Inye was at the trash boss, Maharix Martin, Hog ma wak tago, hook share. A mach me le rudi yen and Tommy Bertie and Vimy Zanvel. But Dan were anything. I was so much go Rahasan, he's in Chin, Kinal, Neshka to Hunde, Agus, Hugmich Courts, Ui Raftery, at our Corrigan, Agus, took him Courts Ui Raftery or Lido once me and Gopley and Agus Bedr Nis Miniki. So, Ta Raftery falls Lummer Val, Agus Nuravim a chemic session called Nisach Minik door. Here in Injuan, it's been all on Raftery or Gassa and Shin. Agus Arian, Tawas Agam was at the oldest Agam Noran, is covering them on tighter father one, the Shinoran Shin, agus a maid cooler one, agus a Russia Bunny or dinner fear no marrow. So, Faden Shedum, imagine a Madame Lazare, Vime agus me, abis the Chevy, Derry Suller School Mela Schnauer. There should be films that aren't finished, they're abandoned. I felt like the same about the novel was that I could have kept fiddling with it for at least another 6 months easily. I wouldn't have made it much better. So Vijanam Skilalash and Mishevi Geri, I was made Chichima Mahola, Samina Venus, because Samina were. She should carrot, carefully Nelly, she should shed, will session, Jirafan Kinal and level carrot Mahonach and her gach piece. I was playing a creamy where was it Howard Nagabich Lee and was it and clear on Rutherford, Colonel Hale. I don't know if you ever got that when you were working on A Ghost in the Throat, but when I spent years like gigging, performing my songs. And the thing about that is that running order is hugely important. And I would have enough, think carefully about what song am I going to open with, and then where am I going to go, kind of take it back a bit, and may, light and shade, make them laugh, make them cry, kind of thing. I don't know, maybe it's the same in when you're reading poetry. You have that kind of, and I think it's a great practice actually, and not to stick with the same order all the time, but constantly be juggling it around. And when I was putting the novel together, because the character or the chapters were slightly interchangeable with a bit of editing, I spent a good while kind of saying, well, should that go before that or that after that? So it was that kind of training, the musician's training of putting the set list together.
Yeah, it's funny because as a reader, I can't imagine it being the jigsaw being put together any other way than it is. It just seems so perfect. Like tá sé fearfar an slí an áibríte ón léthóide I like on Dave Shinte. Is stoilm gwil darkar lethe gotsa litríocht na Gaeilge mar scríbnor agus mar ailseoir. Conas mar a bhreithnítear an dowchaí. How do you sense, with the unique perspective that you have on Irish language literature, as both as a writer and as a publisher, that kind of perspective that you have, where do you see, or how do you see the future of Irish language literature developing?
Ceistwa.
Ceistdearnach so biggie really clipper.
It's stoilm go lábhar dócha seo, is stoilm go bhfuil tá cin an síl leabhrán nach míoch, bhfuil sagad agus tá pobal leabhrán, tá tríéis stoilm I deanghfuil na chéile ar líne agus a chohí na chéile mar phobal, agus tá tú ná chólas chuir amach, aber bhíon gcónaí cráite agus mu den géir bh six mar sin rud tá tácht agus rud nach dardaí agus rud atá na dheacrach fóbar. Ach mar sin héin, níl fó brathe sin go thomláin is, mar tá tú ná de scéal héin a chur amach ar Instagram agus ar Twitter, you know, if it lasts till Monday. Ach tá na hádáin sin an is. Maidir leis sin scríbhneoirí, well, sin tá, it's an interesting question because I think myself, this is my personal take, is that I think there has been a lot of emphasis on writing, especially prose writing in Ireland, in Irish, which has to do with you know, almost recording and preserving the language in a certain way. And you know, what I'm trying to write, the kind of style I want to write, I really want you to understand it. You know, it's not that I'm dumbing it down, but that it is, if you're a competent Irish speaker who can understand me speaking, well then, you know, it'll be a bit heightened from there. There'll be maybe the vocabulary will be slightly wider, or it'll be, but it won't be like whoosh, way up. And I think a lot of writers for me do that. You know, you meet them in the pub or you meet them in the shop and they're talking like this, but then when they write, they're like, whoa, way up there. And I think that's a problem. I think there's a problem between, it's kind of like the way the bards, you know, their classical poetry was just so divorced from Cainta na Ní, from the speech of the people. And that's my take. So what I want to write, I'm not worried about like what I want to capture in when I write is voice and character, and I don't really worry so much about language. It's voice and character that I really want, and emotional pitch. Those are the things that are really important to me.
Okay, Inca gur míle maithagad agus gur maithagad se go léir as éiste na ceisnagus na fregraí an tuaithe sin. And will Tadhg Mac, do any of you have a question? Who's going to be extremely brave now? Inca, very glad.
The dear Rasher, yes, you reflect out of Hanahan, yes, you're now, you know, or professional. So it's like, you know, spatial was going to the kind of scale, that's good and push the last for the actors. You know, education in Yinha, Mahai, Braher, you know, and way to try to air and expect them. And this winter they are not different us, or it's actual stuff, you know, scale or for this. Would say the hand was like per first scale or for this. You nursing scale or as square so because Sean spatial working, you know, working tank is, you know, later on what I'm good, you know, blue shop basically I'm willing while I'm going to tap Machas it's gone back to the technically like the feeling down Mahampa as this scale or level, you know, style function and I'm willing and blue shop Shinam Desh Shinam Elu Machas gone back to
yeah, it's like rather Shinam Simul Shinam Simul Canada Ruddy istóí atá deachar ag prósa scríb méige. Ná bhhailm tá grágam den cinál den réalachastanga. So aber bhí mé gur rud a lunú a bhí lunathe aber in árann na tríchadaí agus an cearachtaí agus íireachtaí anamh cinál brethir an síl sin ó híomh stíl teanga gan dul thar fór leis níor mar chuirta fala a bhí muintear árann na tríchadaí léite sinna ach mar sin bhí ceart gnáthach gur gunnacht a bhí tú agus gur gur sé nádar a bhleor. Agus an sin tá chuidhhaid an scéal go bhfuil sé le tuiscint cé gur an éige tá sé scrífa gur i bhfranciise tá sé tharlú. Agus ceanna go bhhainnig tá sin agur gur maithlam an cheangail sin a dhéanamh leis an teanga séine leis an daintíí mud a híle bhéla. A chamáile sin bhí me an deachreacht a bhain le rudacínta aber dá meach an leisin den scéal luníthe London nó mála clí an áidcínt. Bheith sé fós a scríb an éige a feic sé le tuiscint gur méle bhí sé tharla. Agus heasta bhfuim é sinna chachait. Mar hí me gur sé sin ní spéisiúla. So bhealach sin bhealach ní hégur am rá tá mé an just neamhhar a ggéanamh gona sasamí nó sin mar hit sé má. Gur má fi
Anna bhá, ceist an spéisiúil. Éile bhfuil ceist cineala go taig.
I thought when the goni find the blianta in Indráin. I can't find Indráin. Thought when the goni find the blianta in Indráin.
Well, ar spit out.
Spit in, okay. It's actually Indráin. I can't fall.
Cé bhagul me choní an sin?
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, Jenna. You know.
Tá go bheith chomh
Dágmuid blá lí bre sé spethe blianain agus bhí obair ar fáil sa tíobh sin tíre rud a thugad nuas sa teame agus an sin de réir chéile thosa mé isteach ar an bhaid se thuirh. Gel sé go mádum ó híomh na haibreó agus gel sé go mágam a bheith luní san ggéaltacht ó híomh forbert dhéanamh ar an rud a bhí arsúlagam. agus chomáile sin an obair a bhí me dhéanamh an obair a bháin le bheith léile leabhar a méige nuair a bhí sé cinál nuair a bhí sé tréimhithe i gceantar ar an teanga a bheith a himpeall. Bhí sé ar bhealach bháid níos éasca dom hain creistúint san obair agus bhí sé bháid níos éasca dom má bhisneach a chuineáil agus creistúint go rá mé an ar bhealach beagéigen an dá nachrú agus rudí beag dhéana gomórhór aber an tafada rinne mé ar gastar na háte le rudí cos gogaí go agus ar bhd. A bhfuil ceangaach go bhar bhealach leis an charachtar muréad agus í féil go is gur mar an saoling go meachna ranta sin ar fád ar bhhar a goibetí. So istóilm gur sé go deas má híal croíoch agus má híal profisiúntas do bhí a cheangail agus a phréimhú sa teanga ar a me gobarínte.
Stachar chu a haú carfútaí ná líon is.
Is madam go blachlia.
File go chun mar
sam man sin humor fiú leis sin éiltacht a fiú just fiú le séal na carach. Spreáil an cuairsahuiirt a charachaí agus sealaní cha a charachaí blachlia is an áidir ach pegí sí an tú mór.
Dúirtíonn sinna ha gur thosa tú scríb talíochta ar thar a cinnta de híal chun an iliachta sppraga anas nó just ar thar sé go randamach nó.
Well, mar a dúirt me sílam go bheith chuí go raibh me ggéire bhí smuoine bhagam le haid uisceil nua agus bhí rud go leor eile tarlú agus dír ar bhealacha cíts ní rá me réile tosú ach bhí smuointe eile teachtasteach me ceanasta me, ok, tíidir me dála sin. So so sin a hála. Ní lánach fiú ní bhena duine bhéh mhór fuha ach ní lánach just fiú cleachta a fiú an sása bhhain le rud cinn a scríomh agus an sinné ascríomh agus an sinné múnúisteach ina rud cinn so yeah.
Daniela?
Is putting on Tadhg, there are people there who really good. To a Tadhg Pashti, but here on Ní, could be in Shansko. Agus Lartilum free, Bukalin Bio, agus an Kate Crown more a Honey Shade. She take more the done Shansko and Chin. Agus Vishay Toiki Leshan Crown more music show. Agus Rinnishi and down new Witcher, you know. And what came to start our show?
Níl sam. Is crimmin am scata gasar a hort go black lí as tíirní a bhí páirteach sa CD sin gogaí gog agus crimmin mo gcónaí galí beg seo bhí muid gáil rí chorach chiadara agus is si bran amachar na bán do mór a faisian agus chas si agus Gneada an gáí mór míteach. So, níl agam ceartna bit de cheiste agartáir sin na bhil ach stoi aber ára na úsáid mar onad don scéal. Stoi cean gan na fáinnig gur rana me Ilan gur chuir sé ar bhealach le leis an mrua bhí ar garachtar agus leis an gaiblint agus leis an gur rá ar bhealach gur rá implochtaí móra ó híhann scéal a bhaint leis an garachtar bheith lunaí ar an Ilan. Agus gur chuir sé sin leis an blocha.
Wow. Daniela? Tween.
But the swing were over maximum nua in about it was an overscale nua was in Shannon Daggett and Cohen.
Tá mé tosaí le cúpla míonos tá mé tosaí ar rud nua. So tású legam mé leacht. Agus is scéal tá lunithe sílan ceol agus níhéantar mór an níos móna sin rá.
Gur mágad. So bíonn tú de hí seach clógur
le gorid tá mé mar hí.
Well go mairí go gealat agus is tamcíint go gastan agus uhéna gur buchas ghála Tadhg agus muintir cinneasacht an ócáid iontach seo agus leathéin as tacht. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful to celebrate this amazing book and I'm so glad that you could all be here this evening. We're very grateful to Kenny's for hosting us. Thank you all for coming.
agus camera in ócáid anias aglah anias ón bhirteach so gur a míle agus